Hey everyone, Marco here, and in the last video I showed you how to color correct Fuji F-Log video, and in this video I am going to show you how to color correct and grade Blackmagic design film. Specifically, I am talking about the 6K and 4K pocket cameras, probably and arguably the two most popular cameras in the Blackmagic lineup. I'm currently being shot on the 4K, and this right here is the 6K that I've been testing for the past about month or so. It's super easy, and Blackmagic gives you an awesome code, especially if you take advantage of Blackmagic RAW. You also get ProRes on board, which is about equally as easy to use, especially if you're a Final Cut user. But again, I love DaVinci Resolve, so I'm going to show you my workflow in BRAW in DaVinci Resolve 16 Studio. So let's go ahead and dive straight into it. All right, so now we're in DaVinci Resolve 16 Studio, and I have 3 clips here that I shot using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. Super long name, again, but an awesome camera. It gives you a lot of abilities. So the great thing about this is you can shoot in RAW, and RAW really gives you basically the most latitude in post. You can really do whatever you want to your heart's content here when you have a raw image. One of the really cool, powerful tools is the way that you can decode your raw file. So these were all shot in Blackmagic RAW, which is their proprietary compressed format, very similar to Airy RAW and Redcode RAW. This was shot, I believe, in either 8:1 or 5:1. I couldn't quite remember, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. You have all the properties of shooting in RAW. And the way you can decode this is you can either decode it for the whole project or do it on a clip-by-clip basis. And once you do that, you actually open up all of these awesome settings. You can see you can change the white balance. You either have your custom templates there, or you can manually input a Kelvin unit, for example, which if I wanted to go like 4,000, for example, I can make it, or 2,000, I can make it really blue. It was at 5,600, I believe. So let's go ahead and bring that back to where it was. You can actually change the color space from Blackmagic to Rec 709. You can also change the way it was shot. If I wanted to go to the video format, it would show you what it looked like, and I can go to extended if I wanted a little bit more dynamic range and a little bit wider color space, but I'm going to keep it at film because I want to show you how I would do it. Now, one of the really cool tools about shooting in RAW is you can change the ISO, for example. If you overexpose it and you shot it at 800, you actually want it at 400, you can just literally select it and boom, the image is changed. And highlight recovery is a really interesting tool. If you do blow out something beyond retention, you can try to use this, and Blackmagic will try to do their magic there, no pun intended there, to get those highlights back. Honestly, I've used it a couple times and it actually has worked sometimes, but again, try not to overexpose every single image, even though the Blackmagic camera does like to be overexposed. So let's go ahead and just color grade this image the way that I would color grade it myself. So I already have my RGB and my waveform for the luma. So just like previously, I generally like to start with my offset. So because this is a brighter image, I'm actually going to offset it low a little bit, and I'm actually moving the entire graph down, and then I'm going to go ahead and start expanding my image here. So I'm going to drag my shadows down, drag the midtones down, and then maybe just boost a little bit of a highlights, and that kind of gives me, if I look from start to finish there, gives me a little bit more definition. You can see the grays are a little bit more defined, not quite as washed out, and you can see the texture on the wall behind this container. Next step for me would probably be just to add some contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a value of 1.15. Again, gives it a little bit more contrast there in the image, and then I can boost up my saturation to maybe about 70 or so, and that gives you, a fairly good looking image. Now, if I go to the end where I'm starting to see a little bit more color here, turn that off to where it was, and now where it is, it looks a whole lot better. The image to me is still a little blown out, so I'm going to go ahead and change or go to my color curves and select the luma section. And I'm going to go ahead and just take my highlights and drag them down a little bit. And you can see the highlights on the tree recovering, which is really good. And I want to go ahead and actually maybe get a slightly cooler image, just slightly. Can we do that? There we go. Yeah, let's go to 5200 and see if that looks good or not. There we go. Okay, it looked a little too yellow for my liking. But again, from start to finish, looks really, really good. Really easy. Again, took me a matter of literally a minute to get from washed out and gray to a very good looking image. Let's move on to the next image here. Again, high contrast, high dynamic range scene. We're getting, took a couple pan shots here, but basically we're getting a pan from sky to this really cool looking rustic building. So let's go ahead and decode this again with the clip settings. You can see all the settings that I used: ISO 400, Blackmagic Film, and the color space of Blackmagic Design, and the color temperature of 5600. I'm going to assume that I'm probably going to want to bring the temperature back to 5200, and then we can go into our color wheels, just like before, and let's reduce the offset a little bit, drag that down, and then get some of the shadows to come down, push a little bit of a highlights, and then the midtones are, again, fairly up there, so let's bring some of those down. And let's go back and change my contrast level to 1.15. Add some definition, saturation to maybe 65 because it's a fairly saturated scene already. And again, you can tell that it is a little overexposed, so that was a little too happy there with the exposure, and let it just go a little too high. So you can see where it was, and if I bring back some of those highlights down, you see a lot more retention in those grates of the building, which is, I mean, again, it's really, really cool to see that kind of level of detail and data still in this if it looks blown out to you. Overall, again, it's a very easy, very forgiving type of video format to work with. I mean, you really have essentially all the flexibility you need in post, and that's really the awesome thing about shooting in RAW. So from before to after, you can see a ginormous difference. And again, takes literally seconds to get to this level. So when color grading and color correcting looks like a daunting task, it really isn't, as long as you know what you're looking at and you shoot fairly well when you're actually shooting off the camera. Now, if you're using horrible settings, get in RAW, not such a big deal because you can recover that, but don't get in the habit of shooting bad and fixing in post. You obviously want to get most of the look in the camera and then tweak it in post. That's really how everyone should shoot. And do such a great job with the exposure here, obviously, because everything here is pretty much blown out. I didn't have any ND on this camera, and it can only stop up to about f16, so I was basically right up there. So this last image here, again, very high dynamic range setting. You get the shadows of these buildings, and then the sun is actually behind here, so you get a very bright and dark image in one scene. So this is going to be a cool little challenge for me that I'm actually looking forward to do. So let's go ahead and go back to the camera raw settings. I'm going to decode this as a clip. You see all the same settings again, ISO 400. I can bring it down to 200 if I wanted to, just to get a darker scene. But again, let's keep it at 400. And I'm going to go ahead and check that box of highlight recovery, and just to keep that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and say 5400. And then we'll set that as the baseline, and then switch over to my color wheels. Bring some of this offset down, but I don't want to do it too much because my midtones are actually fairly low. So I can boost those and bring some of those up, and then I can bring down the shadows, and that kind of gives me a baseline, add some contrast. We'll do 1.15 like my normal number here, and then let's say saturation set to 70%. And you can instantly see those red popping out of the umbrellas. It basically instantly, right? It was really, really instant there from before to after to just this point. Super dramatic difference. And that's before we even go to the color curves and start manipulating some of this footage. So I can boost up a little bit of the midtones, but also get some of those shadows and details and get more definition in the buildings and the boards. And then my highlights are starting to blow out, so I can bring some of those back. See those sky highlights there from completely blown out, basically all white, to now we're getting some more blues in that sky. Again, it looks really, really good. Let's go ahead and just warm up the image just a bit. And, I think that actually looks really good. It looks very filmic, very cinematic, obviously. turn that off, go back to on. You can see a lot of details are retained here in some of these dead plants. You can see the detail in the tree. Then obviously the dynamic range that you're getting from the shadows. Even, look at this. I mean, we're talking about a not very well lit in direct shadow, and you can still see a lot of the details in the boards of the ceiling, and you can still see basically everything behind it where the sun is. Again, it's a super powerful camera. It's a very awesome codec to work with. I mean, Blackmagic RAW is hands down one of the easiest things to work with. I mean, if you have even just a somewhat powerful computer, you will be able to edit this like no problem. I mean, I am editing a full 6K file in a 6K timeline, and it's playing with color grades at full speed, 24 frames a second. I mean, we're talking, and I'm currently, doing a screen record and in recording audio. So no problem whatsoever in terms of using Blackmagic RAW. Don't be afraid because it's RAW and it's larger sizes files. It's actually a very easy thing to work with. So this has been my quick little tutorial of how to color correct and grade Blackmagic Film in DaVinci Resolve. It's a really, really, really easy codec to work with. The colors are there. The color space and the color science is amazing off these Blackmagic cameras and the sensors. I mean, you really can't go wrong with this type of recording setup. If you want to see more videos like this, you want to see different cameras, different codecs, please leave me a comment below. Hit that thumbs up button if you want to see more content. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well to see more future content on this channel. I want to say thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys all very, very soon.